The morning on The View started like any other, a lively atmosphere, a table full of steaming coffee cups and the usual blend of laughter, debate, and headline-worthy moments. Okay, because maybe that is a word that's triggering, and so let's not use that word. I don't know, want to call it. Whoopi Goldberg and the panelists settled into their seats, ready to dive into the day's topics with the same confidence that had kept the show running for decades. They were no strangers to heated discussions, viral exchanges, and controversial guests. They had handled politicians, celebrities, and even the most divisive figures in pop culture. But today was different, because today their guest was Bill Maher, and Bill Maher wasn't there to exchange pleasantries or play by daytime television's unspoken rules. And you know, we were saying in the break we have to come up with a new word for let's have a contest, because from the moment he sat down it was clear he had come armed with sharp wit, unfiltered opinions, and zero interest in tiptoeing around sensitive topics. What started as a standard conversation about politics and culture took a sharp turn and escalating into one of the most unfiltered, brutally unscripted debates the show had ever seen. The usual rhythm of The View, where the host maintained control and steered conversation, for it began to crack as Maher pushed back against their narratives, challenged their arguments, and refused to let any point slide without scrutiny. The tension in the room grew thicker with each exchange, the usual daytime talk show decorum slipping away as the discussion turned into an all-out battle of words. By the time it was over, Whoopi Goldberg looked visibly rabid. The panelists were left scrambling to regain their composure, and social media had already reached a verdict. The internet was buzzing, clips were spreading like wildfire, and one thing was certain: annals 5. Bill Maher had just delivered one of the most talked about moments in The View's history. The conversation began, like many others on The View, a broad discussion about the state of the Democratic Party and the cultural battles that had overtaken American politics. Whoopi Goldberg, ever the seasoned host, leaned forward in her chair, her voice steady and assured as she laid out what she believed to be a simple truth: something to people on the left just want fairness. That's what this is about. We're trying to fix things, and people don't like it. It was a familiar talking point, one that had been echoed on the show time and time again. The belief that progressives were on the right side of history, that their efforts were rooted in justice and equality, and that any opposition to their policies came from ignorance, bigotry, or an unwillingness to evolve. 7. But before she could continue, Bill Maher was already shaking his head. He wasn't nodding along an agreement. He wasn't offering a polite acknowledgement before shifting to another point. No, he was pushing back hard. He didn't even wait for Whoopi to finish her thought before cutting in, his tone measured but unmistakably firm. No, Whoopi, that's not what's happening. You want to talk about. But the audience stirred, sensing that this wasn't going to be the usual back and forth. There was no sugar coating in Maher's words, no effort to soften his disagreement. 9. He wasn't playing the role of the friendly guest here to promote his show or exchange pleasantries. He was here to say what he believed, and he wasn't going to hold back. People aren't rejecting fairness, he continued. They're rejecting nonsense. A collective gasp rippled through the studio. Maher leaned forward, his expression unwavering, as if daring anyone to challenge him. The left has abandoned common sense, he pressed on. Isn't about equality anymore. It's about forcing people to accept absurdities or be labeled a bigot. His words hung heavy in the air, the kind of statement that didn't just invite debate but demanded a response. Whoopi blinked momentarily, Caught off guard, she had expected Maher to be an ally, a fellow liberal who would reinforce her points and agree with her. The street, that's not the view of the whatever word we're going to come up with for this, their view of the homeless is other. Levin. But instead he was challenging her directly, unapologetically, and in front of millions of viewers, and in that moment it was clear this conversation wasn't going to go the way the View had planned. For years Bill Maher had proudly identified as a liberal, aligning himself with progressive values and championing causes that once defined the Democratic Party. But as time passed he had grown increasingly frustrated with the radical shifts in left-wing politics, the extremism, the censorship, the unwillingness to engage in real debate. And now, in front of a live audience, he was making it painfully clear that the View wasn't just reflecting the problem, it was part of it. "Well, you all sit here every day," he said, his voice steady but ed as he gestured toward the panel, "and you tell America what they should think, but the second someone disagrees with you, you attack them. That's not a debate, that's a sermon." The audience reacted instantly. Some murmured in agreement, nodding as if Ma had finally said what many had been thinking for a long time. Others sat stiffly, visibly uncomfortable with where the conversation was going. 15. Few gasps could even be heard from the crowd on the panel. Whoopi Goldberg let out an awkward laugh, shaking her head as if to downplay the weight of his words. "Oh, come on, Bill," she said, attempting to keep the mood light. "We don't attack people, we just call out what needs to be called out." Her tone was breezy, dismissive, as if she had heard this criticism before and was ready to brush it off. But Maher wasn't buying it. Not for a second. His eyes narrowed as he tilted his head, refusing to let the moment slip away. "Oh really?" he shot back. 14. When you shut down conversations about crime, immigration, or even basic biology, when you scream bigot at anyone who doesn't agree, what is that honest discussion? The temperature in the room shifted. Whoopi's face darkened. She was used to being the dominant voice on the View, the one who dictated the flow of conversation, the one who had the final word of navigating friendships with opposite political views in today's heated political climate. 15. The show's usual rules: he wasn't going to let them steamroll over him or deflect his arguments with rehearsed talking points. He turned to the audience, his voice unwavering. "This is the problem with modern progressivism," he declared. "It's not about justice anymore, it's about controlling the conversation and punishing people for questioning the narrative." For the first time the room fell silent, not the usual View chatter, not the mix of applause and disagreement that typically accompanied controversial topics, just silence. Because this time the usual tactics weren't working. Whoopi, sensing the moment slipping away from her, realizing that Ma wasn't going to fold under pressure, scrambled for a new approach. If she couldn't win the argument, she had to change the strategy, and fast, desperate to regain control of the conversation. Whoopi did what she had done countless times before. She attempted to pivot, shifting the focus away from Maher's criticisms of the left and steering the discussion toward a safer, more familiar target. She straightened in her chair, her expression tightening as she leaned forward and spoke with a measured but assertive tone. "Bill, you've made your career criticizing both sides," and she said, choosing her words carefully, her voice carrying the weight of years spent dominating debates on the show. "But why aren't you talking about what Republicans are doing? What about the real threats to democracy?" It was a calculated move, a well-worn debate tactic designed to deflect attention away from a crumbling argument and place the burden of proof back on her opponent. If she could steer the conversation toward the usual View talking points: Trump election, denialism, voter suppression, the erosion of democratic Norms maybe she could regain control of. The narrative maybe she could push Maher back on the defensive, forcing him to acknowledge that whatever faults the left had, the right was the real problem. And just like that, the View's carefully controlled narrative was shattered live on their own stage in front of their own audience. Whoopi and her co-hosts, who had spent years dictating the conversation, suddenly found themselves on the receiving end of a debate they couldn't spin, control, or shut down. Bill Maher didn't just push back, he exposed the show for what it really is: not a place for open discussion, but an echo chamber that crumbles under real scrutiny. And now the internet is having a field day. Clips are going viral, reactions are pouring in, and the world has already chosen a winner. Some say Ma was simply saying what needed to be said, while others argue that The View was long overdue for a reality check. But what do you think? Did Maher expose the hypocrisy of The View, or was he being too harsh? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you never miss the latest celebrity drama and media showdowns. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next 15 of navigating friendships with opposite political views. In today's heated political climate, it's not just about politics. 16. It's about morality, ethics, it's about cruelty, it's about discrimination, it's about tunnels. So if they need to be destroyed, how do we do that? It's a war. I don't know how to do that, and you don't know how to do that. I assume the